Welcome everybody. Be the first to admit that this is not really the kind of thing that I usually leap at the chance to do. I don't have a lot of experience speaking in front of people, and I'm pretty nervous. But we did a thing, and a lot of effort went into it, and it would sort of be a disservice to the effort that we put into the project and not capitalize on the ways that we could share what we'd learned along the way. So I'm going to tell you about it, who we are, what we did, why we did it, how we did it, and some of the things that we've learned, including some of the highlights along the way. I have to go pretty fast because there's a lot of stuff involved. It's not intended to be a kind of, oh, look at all the cool things I did on my summer holiday. We did do some great stuff, and there are some highlights, but there's also a lot of things across the course of 6 months that we put into the project. Okay, so who we are. My name is Joel Strickland, and my partner is Annette O'Neill. I learned to skydive in Australia in 2006, and I did my first couple of hundred jumps in New Zealand. Then I went to the UK, and I worked full-time as a tunnel instructor. Along the way, I did a professional free fly team from 2010 to 2016. We did the whole cycle of events for that, which is the nationals, the world championships. Which was a lot of fun. We won some things, and we did the whole game with the sponsors and all that stuff. Along the way, I work as a journalist outside and inside of the air sports industry. It's something I did before, and it carried over into becoming a professional skydiver. These are some pages from Skydive Dubai's magazine from a few years ago, amongst some other things like writing for dropzone.com and parachutist in the US. Back in 2012, I met my partner Annette at a base jumping event in Istanbul. It doesn't happen anymore, but we met there. She was the first female to do her, the first and as far as I know, only female to do her first her base number in her first 4 jumps. Annette she does all the things. She's base jumper, like paragliding, speed flying, flying the tunnel, all that stuff. So we're pretty lucky that we get to do projects together that have similar interests. She also works as a writer. She makes a living from being a writer, mostly within air sports. She does some other stuff as well, but she writes for parachutists. She's staff writer for the US Hang Gliding and Paragliding magazine. If you've picked up a copy of Parachutist over the last few years, you will almost certainly would have seen her work. She's in there pretty much every month. You can see all the stuff on her website. So what we're going to do between April and October of last year, we set out to be the first people to visit and skydive in all 50 states in the US as part of one trip. There is a bunch of people who've done the 50 states thing. They have a website and there's a list of names, but no one's ever done it as one go before. So that's what we were intending to do. This came about was we received an invitation from a friend called Melissa who works as a pilot. She was moving to Alaska to start a family, and she said, "Oh, hey, we're living up here in Alaska. Why don't you guys come up and visit us, and then we'll throw you out of a plane." They don't have a drop zone or anything. They just got some aircraft lying around like they do in Alaska, and they're just going to throw us out somewhere. And we said, "Yeah, of course we would. We'd love to." And so Annette turns to me and says, "Would you like to go and try and jump in all 50 states?" And I immediately said, no, because realizing that it would be an incredible amount of work, and the amount of effort that it would in, financial and physical and mental effort that it would take to do this project was huge. But for the first year in some time since before starting a free fly team, my entire summer was sort of stretching out with nothing booked, nothing in it to do. And so I thought about it for a minute, and then I was kind of, well, I've got the time and no commitments and the ability to do a project like this. So we said yes, and then we started planning it. How we do it? Annette originally bought this vehicle to go to Burning Man. It's a 20-year-old RV. RV culture in the US is weird. These things are gigantic. I'll get to some of that later if there's a little time. The good side of having a vehicle like this to travel in is it's massive. It's like a proper apartment on the inside. It's got a desk, and it's got a sofa and a bed and all the stuff, so it's pretty comfortable. The downside is it's massive, and so it's incredibly tiring and stressful to drive, particularly in traffic in some of the places in the US. And so it has good points and bad points about it. There are times when it's the best thing ever. There are also times when you're just like, I hate this vehicle and I just want to be driving anything else. So we did some research and we looked at the best way to get this done around all 50 states in the 6 months that I was allowed to be there with my visa. We looked at some other road trips that people have done, going to all different places. We decided that we would start down here. This is where the RV kind of was to begin with. We would start down here in the southwest, and then as the year progressed up into the summer, we would head up and then across the top heading east, giving us the best chance with the weather through midsummer, up into the northeast, and then down later in the year when things started to cool down, we would be heading back down into the south, like giving us overall the best chance with the weather. A part of what Annette does is she works for a company in the US called Drop Zone Marketing, which is a company run by a guy called James LeBarry, and he does things like search engine optimization and online marketing for drop zones in the US. So she does a lot of copywriting and online stuff for those guys. And so she had a connection to a database of drop zones that we could start to approach for when we started putting together the logistics of actually getting this plan done, because we knew that we wouldn't be able to visit all the places that we wanted to based on simply putting together, like, you know, the route that we were going to take on places that we wanted to visit, places that we felt that we had to visit, and simple mileage. Like, our best guess with putting together the whole plan was it was going to take about 12,000 miles. And so we started approaching drop zones. We had a pretty positive response, partially through the connections that we had with James LeBarry, but also through other companies as well, other connections as well, rather. We weren't asking for a great deal from the drop zones to do the project. We approached them and we said, hey, you know, would you support us with one jump ticket each to get the jump done in the state, and also somewhere to park the RV and like a sticker for the back of the RV and someone to do an interview with if they were available. Pretty soon we had 10 drop zones that said, yeah, come and visit us. And then a couple of weeks later we had 30, and a couple of weeks later after that we had 40, and we got all the way up to having 49 drop zones supporting us for this trip that we could put together a route between and start doing like the finer detail logistics of like actual routes and mileage and Google Maps and stuff like that. And so we started feeling pretty confident about it. So that's what we were asking for: place to park the RV, one jump ticket each, and a sticker from the drop zone. This seems unconnected. Annette's old life, before she became an air sports athlete and a journalist, she lived in Los Angeles and worked as a producer in the movie business. So she still does a little bit of this work each year. And so I've been to a couple of fancy parties, which is very, very strange. But realistically, when you do that work, you work as a producer, what you are is a logistician. Like, it's all about details of organizing like places and times and Google Maps and, you know, spreadsheets and all of that stuff. So realistically, when I say Annette worked in Hollywood, this is what she did. But that gives her a really well-developed skill set for planning and executing self-contained projects that happen within a certain time frame on a certain budget. So she had a really good skill set that she could apply to this. Why? This didn't come about as being like a charity effort from the beginning. It just came from literally out of an invitation to Alaska that just grew completely out of nowhere. As we were planning, we started to discuss whether or not we could incorporate a charity element into the project, whether we had the bandwidth, whether it was the right thing to do, whether it was the wrong thing to do. And we decided that we did, so we started looking around for different charities that we could use. We looked at a lot of different stuff, like the Civil Liberties Union, you know, various things. But we settled on a veterans project which had a connection to skydiving. Because America is so kind of politically divided, we wanted to represent a charity that firstly meant something to us, but also had broad appeal across, because we knew that we would be going to every state in the US, and there would be liberal states and there would be, you know, more conservative states and stuff like that. So we approached Operation Enduring Warrior, which is they teach wounded and injured veterans to skydive. They have other elements to that project, such as they have a scuba element, and they have like they do like endurance runs and stuff like that. Like, most of you guys will probably recognize Todd Love. He's kind of there. He's the poster boy for the project, because he has the most missing limbs out of anyone that they've taught to skydive. But you know, he's great. They were taught by Nick and Brienne from Axis Flight School, which they're based in Eloy. So these guys head up the training for this program. So it seemed like a really good fit for us. And personally, Annette's father he's a military doctor, and for the last 10 years of his career, he ran a veterans hospital in Tennessee, which is, Annette has a huge connection to being from a military family. She has a huge connection to this stuff already. For me, working as a tunnel instructor, after 5 years of working full-time and flying with every type of human that there is, the memories that really stick with me the most about teaching people are people who have like something that makes it more difficult for them to fly. They'll turn up at the tunnel and they'll be like, I can't do this. And then you realize that with this, everybody starts from scratch and everybody starts from the same place, regardless of their level of physical ability. And you can do it and you can learn. Like Todd Love is a really good example. He has like no legs and he's missing one half an arm, and he's good. He can fly, he can skydive, no problem. And so for me, there was an element of like re-engaging with that kind of community of people. So it sort of fitted. So there's no time to go over everything in that much detail, but I've broken the country down in sort of 5 areas, and I'd like to talk a little bit about something that happened in each of the places and some of the challenges we faced, and then towards the end, like a little bit about logistics, and then some of the lessons that we learned at the end. So we've got the Southwest, the Northwest, the Midwest, where I died and came back to life again, the Northeast, and then the South. So we started off down in Arizona, like big drop zone, really good place to start, to get current and to finalize our preparation of the project and get going. And then we set off to the north. We went on TV. This is TV in Phoenix, Arizona. It's like a national TV program, shitting myself on TV in much the same way as now. But it was okay. So it was really like we were receiving really positive things about this project from the start, and they were great. And then we immediately broke down. Now the RV is it's a 1996, 20 years old. We knew that it would take some nursing to get around the country. It would take like careful maintenance and not overdoing it and stuff like that. We knew the gearbox was pretty funny, that it was probably on its way out, and we would ultimately have to get it replaced at some point. We were hoping that it would make it through this trip without having to do so, but we got into the very beginning of the trip and it went. We did it. Looking back, this actually happened like 200 miles sort of south of Salt Lake City, where we have spent some time, and so we have connections there. And we realized that this was really the only place that this could have happened to us, and we still could have completed the trip. We managed to get the gearbox replaced in the RV and not lose any time off our schedule through sheer luck. Looking back, anywhere else, and that would have done for it. And so we started doing some jumps as well. The interesting thing about drop zones in this part of the world is they're all pretty high up. So if your drop zone is up above 5,000 feet and you've got a Cessna and you're trying to get to 10,000 feet to do some tandems, like tandem hypoxia is a real issue that they have to keep an eye on there. They're always like looking around in the plane, making sure that everyone's okay, staff and clients as well. So they're pretty high up, and you're on landing, you're praying for a bit of breeze so that you don't have to, go a bit slower. We got to Utah. This is when we were getting the RV fixed. We spent some time in this part of the world, so we had options as to where to jump in Utah. It just happened to be that on the way into town, we talked with this guy called Neil Amundsen. He's formerly of GoPro Bomb Squad, which is the demo team for GoPro. They were active for about 5 years, between 2010 and 2015. They don't do that anymore. Now Neil runs this non-profit called Jump for Joy, and what he does is he does demos into schools, and he does a simple presentation about simple things for kids, like working as a team, executing ideas, stuff like that. He uses props and colored powder and things, and it's really great. They usually do this from a Cessna, from like $4,000 and into the field, and fine, great. This time, just as we happened to be in town, they were like, oh, we're going to do this from the King Air, and we're going to do it from altitude. Would you like to come and join us? So we said, yeah, we would. We'd love to. Thank you very much. And so we went, and we had a couple of small belly groups, a couple of small free fly groups, and about 4 or 5 wingsuiters. And we learned that from altitude, elementary schools all look the same, and there's quite a lot of them. And so we had a plan. We had a plan for this jump, and mostly we just did this, making sure in the right place. But we were in the plane, and people are getting a little twitchy because we don't know which school it is. They all look the same. Neil's got a ton of a ton of demo experience, so not too worried. He finds the right place, and we jump, and it's fine. You know, we find it. There's smoke in the field, and we land, and we all run in and high five the kids, and it's amazing. They all play with the camera helmet. That was great. There was a massive line of kids who wanted to play with the helmet. And then Neil does his presentation, and it's beautiful. This is a town called Provo, which is about 30 minutes south of Salt Lake City. And it was great, and it was amazing. And this just came by just out of coincidence. This wasn't part of the plan. It just happened from the generosity of people. And this is something that you know, carries on throughout the rest of the trip. These things just kind of come out of nowhere. And so that was great. And so we pushed on into the Northwest. And this is the really beautiful part of the US as far as I'm concerned. It's amazing. Like, this is Wyoming. Wyoming is the first state that we encountered that doesn't have an active drop zone. And there's a few of these. So we needed a solution to be able to jump here. And it's just from coincidence that in the months leading up to starting this project, Annette had done a series of articles in Parachutist about skydivers who've been jumping for more than 50 years. And these are on her website. You don't have to dig out the old Parachutist. You can see them. Some of their stories are absolutely amazing. Through producing this work, she developed a connection to Carol and Bill Jones. Carol Jones is a skydiving legend in her own right. Who knows who Bill Jones is? Bill Jones, anyone? Bill is the guy who originally realized that when the reserve parachute is mounted on your belly, it's kind of in the way, and he put it around onto the back and changed everything. Bill is now probably 87 now, still skydives. He's been skydiving since 1950, which is pretty amazing. So they have some family that work at this craft brewery. So this is in a place called Alpine, Wyoming, which is a trendy craft brewery up in the mountains where they play hip hop and wear their hats sideways and they make nice beer. Did we want to go and do a little demo jump into the grounds? They've got a doctor who's like got a 172. It's not a jump plane, but whatever, you'll figure it out. You know, you'll work out a way to get out of it. Did we want to do that? And we'll have a little event on the Saturday. We'll raise a bit of money for your project, and it'll be great. So yes, we would. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Again, just from the generosity of these people. And so we went, and it rained. And all Saturday it rained, so we didn't get to jump. And then on Sunday, weather was beautiful. It was perfect. But the pilot is a staunch Mormon, and he refused to fly. Like even after a special request from Bill, he wouldn't fly on Sunday. So in the end, we ended up doing the demo on Monday, but it meant that we got invited to hang out with Bill and Carol Jones and stay at their house and listen to them tell stories about skydiving through decades. And they were the most amazing stories. And so it was an immense privilege to be able to do so. This is the view from their back porch. Like this is like literally out of the back. This is the T right there. And so pretty amazing stuff. And again, this wasn't part of the plan. It just came out of nowhere. So on the Monday, we did the demo jump. They had these elephant masks they wanted us to wear. And they were like, oh, hey, can you jump with these elephant masks? And we were like, well, no. Yeah, no, not really. But I took it underneath my chest strap. And I managed to get it on under canopy for like 5 seconds and then whip it off and then managed to do it. So got their promo shots and that was great. And there you go. So that was a real privilege to be able to do that. And it was just, again, it came from the generosity of these people just out of nowhere. And then, so originally we intended to bookend this project with beginning in Alaska and ending in Hawaii and doing all of the lower 48 states in the middle. In the end, we ended up flying to Alaska from where was simply cheapest because already we were over budget right from the start. So we flew, we had some friends in Seattle who could look after the RV, which is great, and we flew up to Alaska. We went from Anchorage to this place, which is called Talkeetna, which is in the mountains. We didn't really know what the plan was. Our friend Melissa just said, look, turn up and go to this place, and then we'll make a plan. We arrive and we meet this guy who is called Don Lee. He's like this legendary Alaskan aviator. He's been flying up there for like 55 years, and he's been on this, which is like, like ice road truckers, but it's, like the Alaska version. And he runs a school called Alaska Floats and Skis, which is on the edge of this lake next to this town. It's beautiful. We turn up and he's like, great, stay in the bunkhouse and we'll figure something out and we'll make a plan. So we were like, oh great, we're going to get to jump from a float plane. They're pretty small. They're like little Piper Cub things, like one person in front, one person behind. So we'll go one at a time, and it'll still be amazing because it's beautiful and it's in Alaska and great. And he's like, no. I got a bunch of these planes, and I've got my staff, and we're all going to go together, and we're going to make some photos, and we're going to we're going to get another plane, and we're going to do it like, we're going to have a camera, we're going to have an outside camera, and we're going to get the mountains in the background, and we'll do some promo shots for your project, and we'll do some shots for the project, and some for the some for you, some for me, and it'd be great. And so this is what happened. We had a friend with us at the time, and we all had a plane each, and it's pretty amazing stuff. And like I said, we went up there with no idea that what was going to happen. And so we all, like, gradually, these guys are not necessarily formation pilots, but they're all kind of like slowly creeping together. Like Don's flying the trail plane, and so we're right on the side of these aircraft for about 10 minutes, like being real careful with our pilot chutes. Like, might actually stuff my pilot chute all the way down into the spandex so it didn't go between the cables or anything, and it was great. And then we separated, and we all kind of jumped separately right over the airfield. And the airfield, the guys on the radio were all teasing each other. Like, if you are interested in kind of like, you know, like backcountry aviation, like, go to Alaska, because it's really amazing. And the airport at Talkeetna is like, it's like the supermarket car park on like a 5:30 on a Friday afternoon, when it's just, there's stuff going on all the time. And we were going to jump over just an empty bit of grass at the end of the runway, and they were all on the radio like, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea, yeah, brilliant. But we did, and it was great. So we, pretty great stuff, like some real highlights, and we were kind of settling into this project. We'd done our first 20 or so states, and it's great. We're getting to do some amazing things, but it's taking a huge amount of effort to keep everything going on the road. Like, the amount of stuff that we have to do to keep everything on schedule means that we're pretty ragged in places. Like, we're tired, and it's doing the driving, maintaining the vehicle, like doing the logistics with the drop zones, like changing everything all the time, trying to work on the road as well, trying to make the videos, do the interviews, all the stuff. We're like dawn till dusk every day to try and get this project done. But we're kind of settling into the routine, and we're getting a little bit more efficient at it each time. And so we start to, like, when it gets up to like 20 states, we start to feel like sort of confident that we might do it. You know? This is South Dakota, which is the Trumpiest place that we went to. It's pretty Trumpy in this part of the world. In this part of America, you are surrounded not only by other parts of America, but then there's whole other oceans before you get to the outside world. So it feels pretty isolated up there. It's nice, but this is the Trumpiest place we encountered. South Dakota doesn't have a drop zone either, so we needed a solution for this one. This is Minnesota, and so way down here in the very bottom left corner is a place called Skydive Adventures. It's just a little Cessna place, but they do the 50 states thing for people, and if you want to jump there, they'll fly you 6 kilometers out of the way, and then you can land in the Welcome to South Dakota rest area. And you don't plan this or anything, you just go and you just jump and you land there, and then they pick you up in a truck, and then the people look at you strange, and then you drive back. So that was the solution. It was a pretty easy one, and we did it, and then it's like a 20-minute drive back to the drop zone. So that was good. They actually do, they'll do Iowa as well, because they're right here. You can do the same thing. So it was too windy. After we did 2 jumps on that day, 2 jumps, 2 states, it was too windy to do Iowa, but we did have the opportunity for that as well. Missouri. The drop zone in Missouri it's a little place, it's Cessna Club. When we were approaching them to go there, they said, a couple of times a year, they'll have the staff and the locals over to their lake house, and they'll do some jumps, some water landings into the lake. Did we want to go with them? And we were like, brilliant, this is perfect. We're in town on exactly that date. That's great, let's do that. And so we turn up, and this is what people are like in the Midwest. You're just invited in as if you were old friends straight away. And so they're like, hey guys, it's too windy right now, but go play on the jet skis, take the canoes, whatever, and then later on in the day it'll calm down, and we'll jump in the lake. Before this, I knew the dangers of water landings. I knew that, like, cutting away into a body of water is something that is not, you do not approach casually, and there are many people who've been hurt and many people who've been killed even doing it. And we talked about it all day, about, should we do it, should we not do it? And I was going to, and then I wasn't, and then I was going to, and then I wasn't. Even when we went to jump, I wasn't, and then I was, and then I wasn't. I didn't know. Even under canopy, I still hadn't decided based on what to do. But I did, and I got injured, and I'm going to play you guys the video. So it's pretty good, right? Beautiful day. We're not dumb. We've got, where are they? So this is me borrowing gear. Got my selfie stick, like an idiot. It's like textbook foolishness, right? Like we've got okay, so they've got a pontoon boat. We've got 2 jet skis. We're not total fools. I'm not a total fool. Well, we'll see. And one of the guys on the jet ski is trained lifeguard, so it's set up properly. It's not it's not totally nowhere. But anyway, even after knowing the dangers of doing this, I still decided that I was going to do it. I was like, yeah, I could totally handle this. So I did. I get within. I also know that you're not supposed to look at the water because you can't judge the height over the water. You're supposed to look at something like the tops of the trees or something close to the ground. And even now, I've jumped off stuff that's higher than this before. And so this is about the point where I cut away there and then into the water. And it doesn't look that high to me. But the factors are slightly different to being exactly how high you jump from. And so I'm conscious for a minute, and then I'm not conscious anymore. If you don't like this kind of thing, you feel free to cover your eyes. And so they get me, they rescue me, and they put me back on the boat. And I can't really remember what happened here. And so I'm... Yeah, I know, right? And then they got me. And so, not a good choice. Who would like to guess? Actually, I'll get to that part in a minute. So, I can't really remember anything about this happening. I remember cutting away, I remember hitting the water. The first memory I have is being back on the boat. I'm not wearing my gear anymore. Nobody is wearing skydiving equipment anymore. And the story is that there's also 2 paramedics there. The story is that I've been injured while tubing because they're not supposed to be doing this. They do it every year and it's okay, whatever. They're not really supposed to. I don't blame them because that's fine. We were invited to do this and I kind of ruined it. But the story is I've been tubing. Now I have 2 kinds of travel insurance. One which I get through my bank, which is paying for a service through my bank, which is it's worth shit really. It's impossible to ever get anything back from insurance that you have in bank. The other one I have is Sky Cover, which is I pay for their annual multi-trip policy, which means I can jump any number of times in any country around the world, which is what I need as a freelance skydiver. Neither of these insurances cover me for tubing. So I've been called out about not going to the hospital after this. So this is me just going, I'll be all right, just give me a minute, and I'm not all right. And it goes on like this. This is really just the footage of me. Close the gate behind me. I just closed the gate. It's okay. But I don't really remember this. So
Joe, how long were you unconscious for?
I don't know exactly. I was conscious by the time they got me on the boat, but I don't remember that up until later.
Do you know what height you cut away?
It's 25 feet, 30 feet maybe. It's not my best moment. Okay, come on. Is that it? Oh, what's going on? Excuse me, please hold. Oh no, it's not working properly now. Might have to persevere with this. So I'm pretty sure that my insurance doesn't cover me for tubing. And so I've been called out about not going to hospital immediately on the spot with the paramedics. But if I've got no insurance in America, I'm screwed because even something like an ambulance ride is thousands of dollars. If they take me 40 minutes to an emergency unit, even if there's nothing wrong with me, I'm going to get billed. So I refuse to go to hospital. I'm also kind of hoping that I'm okay because I've got a concussion. It happens. It's not great, but it happens. Also, pretty sure I've broken my ribs. Again, there's nothing you can really do about that. You just have to be sore for a few weeks and then you'll be okay. But hopefully I can walk it off for the next few weeks and then I'll be all right. So I got through about a day of just really lying on a bed before I can feel that something's sort of not right. And Annette says, "You look like you will die on the spot any minute. We're going to the hospital now." And I said, "Yeah, let's go to the hospital now." So we walk in through the University of Wisconsin teaching hospital up to the front desk, and I say, "I have been in a parachuting accident. I'm hurt. I need help." And so they whisk me into the emergency room, and they're going through the whole trauma thing. They're poking at my spine, and a couple of scans, and then the surgeon comes in and he says, "You've split your bowel open, and we need to perform a surgery to fix it. And they're pretty keen on getting this done. It turns out that I didn't have much longer before, if you get an infection when that happens to you, you can drop dead on the spot. So I had about half a day before they were like, you were done. So they do it, and I wake up in hospital, and there are many things to consider about what has happened. Like, I was thinking about why even knowing the risks and even understanding them, I would still make this choice. I would still do something reckless. I don't think I'm a reckless person. I don't think I have, or at least didn't have, the reputation of being someone who's reckless. Like, quite often on a drop zone, I'm in a position of at least some authority, whether it's load organizing or coaching or AFF or whatever. But I'm not necessarily captain safety either, but like, I believe people should be educated and be able to make their own choices. And I was examining why this might happen. Like, as I said, like, we were pretty ragged at this point. Every day is just like dawn till dusk. And was I just simply exhausted to the point where it would affect my judgment to be able to make a bad decision like this? Maybe so, but probably not enough to hide behind. Ultimately, it's a pretty dumb thing to do. At this point, we've done some pretty cool things, and you guys have seen the very highlights of it. And so now in my head, the bar is super high about how things need to be going forwards. Like, everything needs to be this big stunt now, this big amazing thing. I can't just jump and land into a lake or land into a field anymore. It's not exciting, right? And this is something we encounter as in our sport and in its siblings, its sisters and brothers, whether it's base jumping or speed flying or whatever, that the constant draw of the way that we're exposed to people doing like cool, amazing things all the time affects us and affects our judgment. And I think, pretty sure that's what happened to me. It was like, oh, this needs to be a big dumb stunt now, so I'm going to do it. And then I got hurt, and I paid the price for it. At this point, I could have quit, and I could have just been like, I'm just going back to the UK. But I was examining it in hospital, and I was thinking about the intentionality of the project that we were doing and the charity element that we'd taken on. Like, the first news that I got when I woke up in the hospital was, congratulations, the operation has been a success, you make a full recovery. And I was thinking about some of the people that we met and that we jumped with along the way, about people who were missing limbs or whatever, and they wake up in hospital and they are told, hooray, you'll live, but also you now have a missing arm and a missing leg. And how hard that would be, even when it was its most difficult, I had the news to hang on to that I will make a full recovery from this procedure, and that's okay. And so I decided that we were going to carry on the project. We weren't going to quit. I was just going to saddle up and get on with it. And here it is, bowel perforation. I can't read what that says. Closed, non-displaced fracture of the left acromion process. That's like your broken shoulder blade. Concussion with loss of consciousness, and pericardial infusion, which is kind of like the fluid leaking and escaping around your heart. Who would like to guess how much the University of Wisconsin billed Skycover for this service? 6 days in the hospital, 1 ambulance ride, and some scans and surgery. $99,500. This is still going on. I don't understand how medical processes work in the US. Ultimately, insurance companies pay between 5 and 10% of the quoted fee. I don't know why this is a thing, but that's what happens. So ultimately, Skycover pay between 5 and 10 grand. This is still going on. Like, every now and then I'll get a bill from Wisconsin that says, yours 45 grand. I'm just like, let's take that to the insurance company and you deal with them. But anyway, so it was about, I dropped about 15 kilos over the course of 2 weeks just by simply not eating. When you have a procedure like that, this is Annette's father. He worked on the space program in the 60s. He's quite an interesting man. He actually, as a military doctor, was involved in a study about people ejecting from fast jets and landing on bodies of water and the injuries that they sustain while doing so. So he's pretty good company after this procedure. And basically, it's the angle you hit the water. Like, you can jump and you can go into the water. If you go feet first and break the surface tension, you can walk away unharmed. Or if you go in, if you belly flop from 15 feet, you can die. And so what happened to me was, it was in the middle somewhere, and I hit the water just enough to catch a load in the face and chest, enough to knock me out, enough to like split a little bit of that. So it was pretty rough, but over a little over 4 weeks, 4.5 weeks, I was jumping again. Probably maybe slightly too soon, but what I was doing was keeping it managed. I was just jumping with the net, and we were just doing the project jumps and trying to keep it managed. And so we carried on and got up into the northeast. So up until this point, we'd had really, really good luck with the weather. Looking back on it from here, If we'd have had bad luck with the weather anywhere up until now, that would have killed the project. We wouldn't have made it at the end with the time frame that we had available. Because if we'd have had to backtrack across, like, say, Montana, which the drive between the drop zones is like 800 miles, then we wouldn't have made it. We wouldn't have had time to be able to do it. Up in the Northeast, it started to rain. But also, the distances between the states are much, much smaller. So sometimes it's like 60 miles or something like that. Like, you can do 2 in a day sometimes. But it rained, and so to get this part of the country done, I mentioned the effort with the logistics that we were using. There were times when we would have to rebuild the entire area of the project based on missing a drop zone and having to backtrack to it 2 weeks later. And then we'd have to rebuild everything, and every part that you have to change moves another part, and so the entire thing would have to be rebuilt. And this was done by me driving and Annette, like, just constantly working on her laptop to be able to keep things on schedule and on track. Up here we have, this is New Hampshire. This one doesn't have a drop zone either. So we've got Massachusetts, which is right here. We jumped at Jumptown in Massachusetts, which is the oldest commercial skydiving operation in the US. But also they have a Skydive Pepperell, which is up here, which is literally right at the end of the runway. The next field is New Hampshire. And so while they don't really agree to it, they don't really encourage it, if you want to land off, you can jump into New Hampshire, no problem. And then you can just walk back. Annette actually just worked, this is one that I missed. Annette went up with a bunch of tandems, and they were just like, hey, we've just got a load of tandem canopies, it's pretty windy, so we're just going to fly the plane deep into New Hampshire, and you can jump out, and then you can fly your canopy back and land on the drop zone, and your entire jump has happened in New Hampshire, and then you've done it. And we were happy with that, and that was fine. So up here, there's pretty good drop zones. You've got Jumptown, and then Skydive the Ranch, which is like the New York local, so it's busy. There's lots of stuff going on. Skydive Cross Keys, which is New Jersey. Skydive Orange, which is close to where the USPA are based. Like big drop zones, lots of stuff happening. This part of America is where all the people live. And so the driving up here became tough. You know, there's getting past all of these cities, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Washington, Baltimore. It's like 8-lane highways and car parks and big ugly shops just trying to sell things at the side of the road for mile after mile after mile. So this part of the country, the cities are really interesting, the drop zones are good, but the driving became really, really tough. Back at the start of the project, we hoped to examine the way that we live and the process that we were using of going from state to state to become more efficient about how we were using products and you know, the way that we were living as we were on the road. And the idea was that it would get better and better. In actual fact, what happened was it got worse. Like, we ended up completely embracing the homogenization of culture and always going to Walmart and always going to Planet Fitness, because these places have total convenience with what we needed. We'd be able to go there and get everything we needed all in one place and then go to the drop zone. There were times up in this part of the country where this is like a lunch place where you can get good internet, so we would do these 3 places. If they were all in the same car park, that was great. But then there are times up in that part of the country where you're in a massive car park and you're surrounded just by these ugly shops, and all you can see is more car parks and more ugly shops, and the feeling there is pretty powerful. We're ruining the world, and this is just day after day after day. So there were times when this was a real grind. But then you kind of get to Virginia, which is the line that was like, this is North Carolina, and you pop out and you're in the south, and suddenly it's the countryside again, and you're like, oh, this is great, this is amazing, and the people are super friendly, and the food's really good, and you're back to exploring and learning about America in the way that I signed up for at the beginning, you know. And so we got to Paraclete, which was quite a big stop for us, which is a big military place, so part of the project. There's a tunnel there, I have friends there, I want to see them. And immediately, we got hit in the face by a hurricane. And literally, Paraclete XP is here. And so we were there, we had 6 days ahead of us there, which is, for this trip, is an incredible privilege to have that amount of time in one place. Usually it's half that. And we got there, and they were tying down the RVs and the aircraft and tying the doors closed on the hangars, and they were like, guys, if you guys should leave, if you can leave, you should leave and go inland, because this is going to be rough. Because this is a game they play every year, and like hurricane season in this part of the world, they have to deal with it. And you really start to notice the kind of the socioeconomic differences of people who can flee, who can pile their stuff into an RV or a truck and go inland, and people who are stuck there boarding up their houses and just going inside and waiting for it to go away, you know. And so the storm didn't turn out to be quite as bad as these projections were were showing, like there were still people died. There were still like 12 people who died, you know, and so it's also getting worse. Like, and this is something that we learned about traveling so much in a lot of places recently, is that everywhere we go, they say the weather is worse. I mean, everyone here probably has examples where they can be like, you know, the weather's not what it used to be. Like in Europe, it's like, yeah, hooray, the best summer ever. Everyone's going skydiving, and it's like now it's getting worse and worse every year, which is pretty troubling. So the drop zones down here in the south are super nice. Special mention for all the Spaceland drop zones that are great. These are kind of more like mid-sized places where, you know, the big, huge drop zones are great, but things can feel a little bit fragmented in like places like Eloy or Paris, where there's, you know, tons of stuff happening all the time. These are more kind of like mid-sized drop zones where it's big enough so that there's stuff happening and there's like a plane going all day, but also small enough so they have these kind of family vibes. Special mention for Spaceland Atlanta, which was I think, in terms of a drop zone, my favorite. It's kind of tucked away in the woods on its own. It's got a pond, it's facilities, all the camping is in the woods. So I really liked it there. Getting on towards the end, this is Lopez. He runs the OEW stuff in the south, like down in Florida. He's based there, and he's a super great guy. He's one-armed skydives. And so then we got to Texas, this is the end of the driving part of the trip for us, because we realized that it would be easier to fly the rest of the way to the places that we need to go. So we dropped the RV off there. We flew down to Spaceland Miami, and then we flew across. Nevada, we'd missed Nevada at the start of the trip because of a storm, and we had to go back there. So we, instead of flying to California, then we flew back to Nevada, jumped at Vegas in the desert, which is beautiful, and then on to California. Went to Skydive San Diego. We could have chose any number of places in California, but we went to San Diego because we have some friends there, and it was nice. And then on to Hawaii, which is the end. So this is Oahu. The thing about Hawaii is that it's beautiful, and the drop zone is amazing. It gets gnarly wind, but there's 3 skydiving operations all lined up next to each other, and they hate each other. And that's all everyone talks about. Like, they're at each other's throats all the time. There's so many beefs among all the staff and the owners that it's just chaos all the time. Like, if one operation puts the plane up in slightly dubious weather, like there's too much cloud cover, the others would be all like filming it and sending it into the FAA and all of this stuff. But it's beautiful there. And then we were done. So there's quite a lot involved. In terms of effort, like physical and mental effort, this project was the hardest thing I have ever done. That's even aside from the extra sort of financial burden and from like getting the RV fixed all the time, and even aside from getting injured, like properly injured in the middle, this would have been the toughest thing that I've ever taken on over such a time. I got some stuff out of it, which is, I can remember names now. When like we were turning up at a new drop zone like every 3 days, and pretty soon, when we'd arrive, we'd meet the drop zone owner and the manifest people and some of the instructors and some of the local jumpers, and then you've met like 10 people, and then they all start asking if you've met the other ones. And the bit of my brain that would usually go, I don't know, is now on the spot about being able to remember. So that part of my brain got conditioned. Now I can remember 10 people's names, and that's kind of stuck with me going forwards after this project, which is a huge win. You know, it's really hard to develop that bit of your brain. The other thing is, throughout the course of this project, so many times the events out of our control will conspire to ruin our plans, and so we got much better at doing things straight away. There's no perfect time to wait, no matter how well you plan and how well you prepare for something. The best time to do it is right now, because like we'd have 3 days somewhere, and that would be a huge luxury. Even to have 1 day free that we didn't have to do any driving or any of the logistics or anything was a huge luxury. But then it would rain, and we'd have to backtrack to another drop zone, and our free time would be gone. And that would be another couple of weeks, another few weeks, another month before we had any downtime. And so the only way to get any kind of time free is to do all our tasks straight away without hesitation. And then hopefully at the end we would have some time to do. And that's kind of carried with me forwards after doing this project and being under that kind of pressure for such a long time and I'm better at doing stuff now, having been under pressure like that for so long. And so the answer is, if you need something to do it right now. I was thinking about a way to sum up the whole thing in a way that everyone can sort of like relate to, I guess. And along the way, a lot of people would ask us which our favorite state is, and it's really hard to answer because everywhere is different. Even states that are really close to each other are different enough that you can't choose between them, whether you're at a big turbine place or you're at a tiny little Cessna club run by volunteers, or whether, how different the states are. And so you can't choose. It feels like a bit of a cop-out to be able to say, oh, I can't choose which my favorite state is out of all. But the really telling thing is the mirror image of that question is also true, that I can't pick a least favorite state that I went to. There wasn't a single occasion that driving away at the end of visiting a drop zone, that in privacy, Annette or myself would turn to the other and say, do you know what, I didn't really like it there. I wasn't really feeling that one, which you'd think would happen, right, after 50 scenarios. But there wasn't a single time that happened. And that's, I think, after experiencing a control group of 50 and having a 100% success rate with the experiences on the drop zones is testament to the community that we're all part of. And how, you can go out there on the road and you can turn up at a drop zone and be instantly welcomed in. And to experience that, the kind of generosity that we experience on the road again and again and again, back to back, like one place into the next place, into the next place, added up to something profound for me, I think, to have experienced it in that level of consistency. And so it's really reassuring to feel that you have that community is out there. This is true of all around the world. I'm sure everyone has examples when people, you just go to a drop zone and someone's nice to you just because you're a skydiver, And so there was a lot involved, but it turned out that we got quite a lot out of it. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you for...